Are you hungry for the usual today? Or are you ready to spice things up with the new Nashville Hot Brisket from Firehouse Subs? We're kicking up our slow-smoked beef brisket with Nashville Hot Seasoning. It's topped with melted pepper jack and our sweet and tangy slaw, served piping hot on a toasted cornbread roll. Yeah, a cornbread roll. Save time. Order your new Nashville Hot Brisket on the Firehouse Subs app today. Firehouse Subs. Enjoy more subs. Save more lives. Participating locations, limited time only.
Prepare for glory!
I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I came out the womb, I was ready. And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly. Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, proud members of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can find them at FTFPodNet on Twitter. You can find me at SportsFanaticMB on Twitter. My co-host for the day, Mr. Matthew Fox at Nighthawk7734 on Twitter, and Mr. Tony Dyer at Commissioner MR. On top of us, there are a ton of other great podcasts on this network, including Jim Day of FF Champs, Adam Ronis and Dr. Roto from Sirius XM Radio, Bob Lung of the award-winning Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, Dwayne McFarland, Blake Sullivan, and a ton of other great podcasts, as I mentioned. You can find all of us on FulltimeFantasy.com, your one-stop shop for all of your fantasy news, advice, and strategies. On today's podcast, as I mentioned, Matt Fox and Tony Dyer will be joining me. We're going to do just a little bit of a fun episode here. Not a lot to talk about. I already put out some of the stuff for the Thursday night game yesterday on Twitter, so we're going to get Matt's prediction on the Broncos game this Sunday. Going to get Tony to talk about his Indianapolis Colts. Going to get some updates on the Movie League and the Vampire Leagues that Matt and Tony are in, and then we're going to talk about some of the most disappointing and surprising players on the season and some bold predictions for Sunday. And we've got the Thursday crew back together. Tony is back with us, and obviously we have Mr. Matthew Fox as well. Matt, Tony, how you guys doing today? How your week's been going?
Doing great. I've had an awesome week. Looking forward to a really exciting football game tonight. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of us that thinks that, I guess.
Well, Fox, the first part of the season, Thursday Night Football is on NFL Network. They pick up on Fox when the new fall season starts. So it's been 2 weeks. In their first 2 weeks, arguably, they've gotten blockbuster matchups and games. The Eagles-Packers game was great, went down to the end. The Rams-Seahawks great, went down to the end. So they're due for a dud. And I would imagine that's what they're going to get tonight. It's hard to work yourself up to any level of excitement unless Patriot DNA runs through your blood.
Yeah, you mean like that Monday night game we just got? I can't remember who. San Francisco played a JV team this week, didn't they? I can't remember exactly who they played, but it was not a pretty game.
Yeah, the difference being you actually thought that was going to be a good game when you started it.
Yeah, you did, and don't call them the JV team.
I know that's an insult to JV teams everywhere. You're right. I do apologize.
Oh my gosh!
I'm sorry. It's been a rough couple days. I don't even drink, and I've been drinking under the table every day so far this week. It's been bad. It's not been fun being a Browns fan here lately. All right, I mentioned it in the intro though. We're not here to talk about my favorite team in the Cleveland Browns. We are going to talk about your guys' favorite teams. We're just a little bit, we're just past the quarter part in the season. I'm going to start with Tony first because you haven't been here the last week. Colts are obviously on a bye this week, but I just want to get your thoughts on them. They've been surprisingly good, although I will toot my own horn here just a little bit. I did expect them to still be good with Brissett and had them right there as a team competing for the wild card. So what are your thoughts so far on what the Colts have done this season?
Well, the Colts, it's pretty exciting, really. I think it was my first podcast with you that was right after the retirement of Andrew Luck. And the big ringing thought that I had was if our backup head coach and our backup quarterback can get together and pull off a season, then it's wheels up for the Colts offense. Because it's coming out exactly that way. From general management to the coaching staff to the players on the field, they're all executing the exact same plan. Run the ball first, check down, get the first down. And Jacoby has shown recently, he did it. I'm thinking of one play in Kansas City game where he threw deep into double coverage, and the call ended up being called pass interference. And it was it was probably not the best place to put that ball in the first place, but he's capable of stretching the field when he needs to. He's checking the ball down to get our first downs, and he held Kansas City to 22 and like a half minutes of total offense.
Yeah.
If that can continue, then it's wheels up for the Colts. They're going to pick up right where they left off. And I hate to say it, Andrew Luck, but we're going to be all right without you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's even more interesting. You go back to that first game. Who did they play in that first game? I can't remember. Who they have in week one?
In week one?
Yeah.
Let's take a look here.
Chargers, right? Was it Chargers?
Yep, Chargers.
Okay,
it was
so
at the Chargers. Yeah.
I mean, what was it? Vinatieri missed 3 field goals or 2 field goals in that game, correct? If I remember correctly.
Are you bringing this up because it's one of those misery loves company things?
No. I'm saying that because, like, has he made those, they'd be 3-2 right now, right? So I mean, they'd be even
exactly right.
better, and that was my whole point, is that they could almost be sitting right there. I mean, right there at the top of the division. Had that happen. No, I love Adam Vinatieri. I was worried he was going to retire, honestly. I'm glad that he didn't. Yeah, I'm really surprised at how good they've been doing. I mean, I'm not the biggest Marlon Mack fan, but I do love T.Y. Hilton. Obviously love Paris Campbell from Ohio State. We wish we could see more of him. I know he's dealing with the abdominal issue. But I feel like the Colts are going to have a good year. How are you feeling with them coming out of the bye and kind of looking forward through their schedule? What do you think they've got? You think they've got what it takes to be a wild card team?
I'm looking ahead, and we've got the Texans on the 20th. So Colts are on bye this week. Texans are playing the Chiefs. It goes Texans, Broncos, Steelers, Dolphins, Jaguars, Texans. And then we go on to Titans, Buccaneers. I mean, they're going to win most of those games, I think.
Yeah.
Broncos are beatable. Steelers are dilapidated with injuries. Not what we expected. Originally, I had a loss for that game, but at this point, the Colts can win that game. Dolphins are a no-brainer. Jacksonville's a 50-50 toss-up. And historically, after Jacksonville, there's a Texans game. Historically, the Colts and the Texans split those. So one of those is a win and one of them's a loss. Yeah, Colts are a wild card team. Probably worst-case scenario.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I'm liking what I'm seeing out of them, and I'm glad in a lot of dynasty leagues I was able to grab Jacoby Brissett. The only reason I grabbed him before the Andrew Luck news. I grabbed him because I thought there was a chance he could be a starter next year, as I assumed Indianapolis wouldn't hold on to him to be Andrew Luck's backup, and then obviously everything happened, and I just ended up lucking into, the Indianapolis Colts starter there. So I've loved what I've seen out of him so far. I can't imagine what it's like to be a fan of a winning team, because me and Matt, neither of us are, so it's great to have at least one winning team on this podcast right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
That's all right. We're happy for you. I know, Matt, in my opinion, the Broncos look better than the Browns as well. So, Matt, tell us what you think of the Browns this weekend.
The Broncos, you mean?
Yeah, the Broncos. See, I can't get the Browns off my mind. It's sad. Yes, the Broncos, though.
I thought you were just looking for somebody to pump you up a little bit.
No, I know you're going to tell me they're
down.
They're going to get blown out by the Seahawks. It's going to be like another 31-3 game probably. So
they're at home. They shouldn't get blown out.
No, you're right. They'll put up 10 points. I apologize.
Denver's interesting. A lot of people, including my least favorite announcer currently working, Tony Romo, were talking about how Denver, could have been 2-2 going into the last game. I suppose that's true. They had 2 home games that probably took 25 years off my life to start the season, which was rough. And I actually had pretty much chalked last week up to being a loss because I thought the Chargers were a better team. They still probably could be a better team, but Denver has looked good the past couple of weeks. I haven't seen them play 4 good quarters, which I would like to see. They did finally get turnovers last week. They got sacks the last couple of weeks. They kind of turned that around. I think they're doing some better things on offense. Tennessee is another really weird team. I mean, they had a soul-crushing victory over your team in week 1. They destroyed Atlanta in week 3, but in between, they've kind of been or I guess they beat Atlanta week 4. They've been kind of but I think they've lost their games at home, so maybe they're just like a fantastic road team. Mariota's a tough one to figure out. Denver against Jacksonville didn't look like they could block a fart in a stiff breeze when it came to stopping the run. And last week, they were just all over Melvin Gordon. Between week 4 and 5, Vic Fangio made a couple of changes, including a starting player on the defensive line and a starter at middle linebacker. They actually, our former starting defenseman, Adam Gotsis, was a game day healthy scratch in week 5. And I'm wondering if that made a little bit of a schematic difference. You know, Derrick Henry's not my favorite player. I hate to say it because I don't know if my heart can take it, but I'm sort of back on the bandwagon for this week. Tennessee has a decent defense, and they're not a bad team, but Denver usually plays pretty well at home. I feel like they could have and possibly should have won their 2 home games. They've got to win one at home at some point. So I'm hoping they can get on the winning track this week.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be an interesting game. Again, as someone who watched the Titans just completely blow out the Browns in week 1, I do think they're getting underrated a little bit. That defense is fairly good. Offense is, as you were kind of saying there with Marcus Mariota. I do think that could be a very interesting. They play in the late window, right, or they play early?
Yeah, 2:20.
Gotcha.
Or 2:05, something like that.
Gotcha, yeah. So that could be one of the better ones. I mean, let me see. I got just here. Oh, I mean, they'll probably be overshadowed by the 49ers-Rams game. I think that's probably what a lot of people will be turning into. I can't imagine anybody's watching Falcons, Cardinals, Cowboys, Jets. So, yeah, I'll be flipping forth.
I don't know. Cowboys, Jets could be awfully compelling. Those Jets, they're a good squad.
I mean, the Cowboys do suck, as we all know. Or at least that's my opinion of them. So. Or, well, no, not the. I shouldn't say the Cowboys. I love Zeke. Amari Cooper sucks. I'm just kidding. I did try to give him an apology the other day. But
if you're going to throw him under the bus, I think you have to say it correctly. He's like wide receiver 3, Amari Cooper.
Right now he is, yes. But we still have a whole season left to play, and that's what I keep trying to tell all these Amari Cooper truthers. It's only 5 weeks. Just watch. I'll be right at the end of the season. At least I hope, because I made too many bets that he won't finish in the top 10. So I really need that. I need him to start sucking fairly quickly now. All right, so let's move on to some of the other stuff we want to talk about today. Matt, I want to get we haven't had a chance to do an update on the movie league stuff here lately, so give us kind of a rundown on what's been going on in the movie leagues. What are the movies coming up to look forward to, and how's all that shaking out?
So Fantasy Movie League started its fall season at the beginning of September, the weekend that It Chapter 2 opened. And I've been doing pretty well. I write the weekly column. I usually post links if you want to follow along. I've been doing pretty well at hedging and picking good value, just not quite at that perfect Cineplex. But I was looking at all the leagues that I'm a part of, doing pretty well in the entire fall season showdown for everybody who is on Fantasy Movie League. I'm number 116, and there's several thousand people, so I felt okay about that. It looks like I'm 14th overall in the Friends of Matthew Berry group, which has quite a few people, and number one in the Fantasy Life app group, which I thought was funny.
Funny? That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm number 1 in the Rich Eisen Show group apparently too. Or first ranking, which I thought was interesting. So last week I had hedged on Jokers and daily scoring. I hedged on Sunday being the best value. I thought it could outpace its projection, and it had a lower cost, so you could sling it across 3 screens. And it was a dicey weekend because they had a huge opening on Friday and didn't do very well on Saturday. And I thought, well, I guessed wrong, but no, Sunday blew it out. Apparently people were not that excited to watch Dallas and Green Bay on Sunday afternoon, and they decided to roll out and watch some comic book movies, and that ended up being the best value. So I was pretty excited about that. That was a pretty strong finished last week. I was just a shade off of Perfect Cineplex. I picked one screen different than the Perfect Cineplex.
Wow.
It's kind of like when you're the second highest scorer in fantasy in a week, but you're playing the highest scorer. That's pretty much how it felt. But this week, there's 3 new movies that open up. October is an interesting an interesting month because you start getting some more award contenders. Not as many huge blockbusters, but there'll be a few blockbusters rolling out as we go through into November and then into December. And so the fall season's ongoing now, wraps up at the end of November. So I'm about halfway through, I think. It's usually 13 weeks. I'm about halfway through, and I'm pretty excited about where I'm at. Hopefully I'll get a Perfect Cineplex one of these weeks.
So how do you get a Perfect Cineplex?
You maximize the dollar value of your so you have a movie theater that has 8 screens. You have 1,000 Fantasy Movie League bucks. It's kind of like DFS in that you have that 1,000 that you can spend on any combination of 8 movies. The difference between Fantasy Sports DFS and movies is you can book the same movie on more than once. So I could, if I wanted Joker, I could put it, if I had enough money, I could take 2 of them so that you get the box office dollars that movie makes. The best performer each week is the one that has the highest return on investment. So the greatest box office dollars per Fantasy Movie League dollar you spent to put it on your screen. That's last week. It was the Sunday showing of Joker was the best value because it was a daily scoring thing. So to get the Perfect Cineplex, you have to maximize your return on investment, and then you get a $5 million bonus that boosts your score up. And for the season-long total, you're just it's just keeping track of how much money you made every week. So there's a way you can win a week, and then a way you win a season is to have the most points or the most dollars overall. So the places where I'm in first place, I've done very well every week, not the best any week, but that's enough to keep me up at the top.
All right. Tony, both you and Matt are in vampire leagues, which I have not had a chance to participate in, but it sounds like a lot of fun. We've kind of discussed it a little bit here and there in our little group chat. Why don't you two talk about the vampire leagues and how it's been working out for you guys, and again, explain to the listeners how that stuff works.
Oh my gosh, vampire leagues are wonderful. Is that funny or is that a corny joke?
I think it's perfect.
It's not funny. It's corny. I do that it's not funny, but it's funny to me when every time I win in the Vampire League, I change all the W's to V's and tell them I'm taking their players. It's hilarious to me. Besides the fact, so a Vampire League is pretty simple. There's a vampire. That person does not draft. Everybody else in the league gets to draft normally, and then the vampire gets everything that's left over. So they're basically working off of free agents, and that's it. Now, the catch is if the vampire ever beats a team that drafts, the vampire gets to force a trade among that team. It has to be like positions, so running back for running back or wide receiver for wide receiver. I can't give you a kicker for your quarterback. That's not possible.
Gotcha.
Like positions, and they have to be starters. That's the only rule. And so that's how it begins. Week 1, I got trashed, obviously. Week 2, I got really lucky. And Fox, we'll hear about yours soon, I hope. I won in week 2 and picked up Devontae Adams. In week 3, Devontae Adams was playing. That was the week he blew up. Picked up Zeke Elliott.
Wow.
And then in week 4, without Devontae Adams, I still managed to win and grab Dalvin Cook. So now my Vampire League is starting on a weekly basis. My starters are going to be Zeke Elliott, Dalvin Cook, Devontae Adams, and I've got Darren Waller on bye this week. So I'm starting those 4 every week at least.
Very nice.
Yeah, so I'm in 2 vampire leagues, one that's second year and one that I picked up this year. I'm the vampire in both. The first one, we started last year, a Vampire Dynasty League, which was a little bit different because it follows traditional Dynasty in that you keep your players. I had the same thing. I was the vampire last year, and because I couldn't climb out of last place, couldn't win any games, I am repeating. But you can only be at a max of 2 years, and it doesn't really matter because I've been much better this year. Last year I won twice. The first time was in week 2, and that was when I still had hope Le'Veon Bell was going to come back. And because it's Dynasty, it does have to be position for position, but we allow you to take from either starter or bench. So I pulled Bell because I thought he was going to come back last year, and You can imagine how well that worked out. So basically, I pulled him for somebody, I can't even remember. It might have been Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber would have been a better play for me week to week. I lucked out last year in that I had scooped up Austin Eckler, and I had used all of my fab budget on Phillip Lindsay, and I had also picked up Dak Prescott. So if you're listening to that, you're putting together that I started with a little better team this year. I also last year won a second game in right around week 6 and took AJ Green, who promptly got injured and lost for the season the next game.
No.
So that's why my 2 vampire weeks, ever since I've had Green as the vampire, I still have him, obviously, because it's Dynasty. He has not played for me. He has not played a full game for me. It's last year, that was, on paper, they were 2 really decent picks, but it really backfired. This year in the offseason, somebody dropped Austin Hooper, so I picked him up on my vampire team. And somebody dropped Larry Fitzgerald, so I picked him up. I had taken Tyler Lockett last year. So I started...
Wait a minute. Whoa. Somebody dropped Larry Fitzgerald in a Dynasty League?
Yes. And Austin Hooper.
Good for you.
Somebody dropped Austin Hooper, said they needed a better tight end. I picked him up immediately because I always have the top waiver claim, and I was like, you guys suck. So I started week 1 with Dak, Le'Veon Bell, Austin Eckler, Phillip Lindsay, Tyler Lockett, Larry Fitzgerald, and Austin Hooper in my starting lineup, and I hip-checked someone and took Saquon Barkley, which hasn't worked out incredible for me yet. Week 2, I also won, and because I was playing a diehard Eagles fan, I took Carson Wentz just because and gave them Mitch Trubisky. Week 3, I also won, and that's where I made a choice of the heart over the head that was a mistake and took Juju Smith-Schuster. I should have taken Michael Thomas, but I took Juju because I like him. And because I thought my team was unstoppable. And then, of course, we know what happened to Saquon Barkley. And Juju hasn't been what I hoped. And Le'Veon Bell went on by. And Dak Prescott came back to earth. And Melvin Gordon returned. So I still have a decent team. But I've lost the last 2 weeks. I was really close. But no cigar. This week, in that league, I have to declare in advance who I'm going after. This week, I'm going for Christian McCaffrey. And right now, by projection, I am projected I think 4 points ahead of this team. So that guy is really nervous because Christian McCaffrey is essentially his only good player. And he already knows he's going to get Matt Breida back. So I don't think he's super pumped about that. I'm starting Dak, Le'Veon Bell, Phillip Lindsay, Tyler Lockett, Larry Fitzgerald, Austin Hooper, and Eckler. So I'm hoping. The other one's a redraft league that I joined, and by happenstance, I ended up being the vampire, and I was like, okay, well, at least I know how it works. The first 3 weeks did not go that great for me. I was scooping good guys off the waiver, but I was struggling about who to play, and I was just kind of missing. I finally hit in week 4 and won and was able to take DeAndre Hopkins. And I traded John Ross for DeAndre Hopkins, so that guy is super pissed, right?
I gave Gallup for Cook, and I loved it. I felt great about that.
Well, John Ross was not injured at the time that I made that trade, to be fair, because I try never to trade an injured player. In this redraft league, the rule they have is you have to trade people that are in starting lineups.
Well, and that's I want to interject again. I don't want to seem like I'm a monster. I had started Gallman.
Yeah.
And our rule is he has to be in your starting lineup too. So I just went ahead and took advantage.
Yeah, last week I was 2 points away from winning, and I would have flipped Gallman for Ezekiel Elliott. I already told the guy, but going into Sunday Night Football, Jacoby Brissett did not have an 11-point game, and that's what I needed to win. So that was brutal. But week 4, I did win, and I was able to flip Josh Gordon for Michael Thomas. So now I have DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, and I have Terry McLaurin because I had a high waiver claim. Mm-hmm. So those guys are out there. Will Dissly is my tight end. It's not bad. Quarterback has been a little bit of a dice roll. Kirk Cousins had been left on the wire. I was super pumped about that until Kirk Cousins played a game, and then I decided I needed to go elsewhere. This week, I'm rolling Gardner Minshew. I also have Brissett, but he's on a bye, and I have Daniel Jones, but that seems like a really bad plan. So I picked up Chase Edmonds with a waiver pickup this week. I'm waiting to see if David Johnson ends up missing. I hate to root against somebody, but that would really help me out. So this week, running back is where I suck. Unfortunately, I have Devin Singletary, but obviously he's been injured a lot and then on a bye. And I have Frank Gore, who's at least been steady, but he's on a bye too. So this week I'm playing Minshew, LaShawn McCoy, Chris Thompson, Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Dissly, McLaurin, and then this league has defense and kicker. So I have the Titans defense and Chris Boswell.
Nice.
Very nice. Well, so you were mentioning earlier how you got Saquon and Juju, so I'm going to use that to segue into my trade, because we were talking just off air a little bit ago about Saquon Barkley and people trying to possibly buy low on him due to his ankle injury, which he may come back sooner than we expected. A lot of people thought he might be out the whole season, not come back till their bye week. There's talks he might be back soon. The reason I bring up Juju, Tony, is I said that I made a trade for Saquon Barkley that might surprise you. So I'm in a 16-team dynasty league that is very IDP heavy, and the fact that we start 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 3 defensive backs, as well as 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, tight end, and a quarterback and kicker. No team defenses, no flex spot. My wide receiver core to start off the year was fairly loaded. I had Odell, Juju, Godwin, Josh Gordon, a couple other players that weren't as big. I traded Juju and Chris Carson for Saquon Barkley. That was the trade that I made.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like
especially
a good deal.
For Dynasty. I can't believe. I mean, I like Juju Smith-Schuster, but Saquon has been the number 1 ranked Dynasty player throughout the year, and then 16-team running back seems like it'd be a much greater premium than wide receiver.
Yeah. So here's my big problem with that, and I'm gonna finish that up so we can get into the talk that you wanted to do, Tony. Is that I did it because I also had who do I else have a running back? I had Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, so I had the Broncos backfield locked up. I also had. My goodness, I'm losing. I drafted Miles Sanders in the draft this year because I took over this team and it was not very good, so I had a couple high picks. I took him. I have Devin Singletary as well, Naheem Hines, and then I just picked up Mark Walton. My problem was I then ended up doing a 3-team trade that ended up getting me DJ Chark back, Sterling Shepard back, but I lost Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman and Matt Ryan to get a top back linebacker, and then I got Jacoby Brissett, which is another reason why I'll be rooting for Jacoby Brissett all season long, but it really kind of killed my running back depth, because now without Saquon, I'm down to Naheem Hines, Sanders, Singletary, and Walton. But my team is not really built for this year, but I did love, like I said, the fact that I was able to give up Juju and Chris Carson to get, in my opinion, the best running back in the game in a 16-team league. So you were talking about possibly trading for or not trading for Barkley because you own him. What are your thoughts on him and possibly selling him or trying to buy him in this limited buy window that we have?
It's a hard thing for me to wrap my mind around because with every other player in the game, I don't know how to say it's a stock market for every player, right? And you buy low and you sell high and you move and hopefully you end up with a greater value portfolio than that person has. But with Saquon Barkley, it gets really difficult to put a value on him. I've got a standing offer right now. I've got an 0-5 team. I hate to admit that, but it's a super flex team. I'm not as well depth and I'm not as well versed in super flex, I guess, as some others. I am not big on quarterbacks, and to my demise. As a result, some things got moved around for me. I've got Saquon Barkley, 0-5 team. My other running backs are Chris Carson, Kerryon Johnson, and David Montgomery.
Okay.
But I'm looking at an 0-5 team, and I'm thinking, well, what business do I have owning Saquon Barkley? I'm not going to win. I can't win the whole thing with just Saquon Barkley.
Right.
So do you cash in? But then the question is, what's enough? Right now, I've got a standing offer for 4 first-round picks. It came across at like 9 o'clock this morning, and I just let it sit there because 4 first-round picks is a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out, where is the value? How does the stock market work with Saquon Barkley? What would you guys do? I guess if you were offered 4 first-round picks on a winless team, what would you guys do? Go.
I'll let you go first, Matt. I know how I'm going to answer it, so if you want, I can go first.
I wouldn't take it. I mean, it seems great and seems like a lot right now, but I mean, maybe when we get closer to the draft and you have a sense of where some of these players are going to come out and where they're going to be, I might be more inclined to take it. But right now, you're just hoping that one of those 4 picks ends up being a player that can produce as much as Saquon Barkley can when he's in there. And, one of the reasons, we'll talk about it a little later, I have him on our disappointing list, is he wasn't that dynamic in the first couple of games, probably because their offense in general sucked so much. With Daniel Jones coming in, you've seen things pick up. They're starting to get passing pieces back. I know what he did last year. I would like to see what he can do in this offense with Daniel Jones, with some people picking up. I think this is probably the worst time to try to trade him. His value's got to be depressed.
Well, and then my only question to that is, we still can't answer the question. If it's not 4 first-round picks, what is it? Is it 5? Is it 4 and Mike Evans? I mean, where is, like, everybody says they're getting offers for Saquon, but I feel like we've got a responsibility. I can't figure it out, so I'm not, like, throwing accountability to you guys. I don't know the answer to this question. Where's the line where we say, okay, yeah, sell Saquon Barkley, and we feel good about it forever?
So, for me, if you're selling Saquon Barkley, you have to get something that's going to – immediately is not the word I want to use. It's going to improve your team in the long run, because in my opinion, Saquon Barkley is the best asset in Dynasty football altogether right now. He is by far – like, you could make an argument, I would say, for 3 or 4 wide receivers possibly being the number 1, maybe even more. I mean, outside of Christian McCaffrey, you cannot make an argument for anybody else at the top of the running back class outside of Saquon Barkley. It's those two. For me, on the trade that you got, if I could get him to possibly take a pick out or even add a serviceable running back, I would take it with you being 0-5. But I am also different than a lot of other people because I love college football. I watch it all day Saturday. I study these players all the time. And just from my opinion now, again, there's no way for me to know this, and we know that a lot of people are high on draft classes every single year. Not every player is going to hit. There is easily 8 running backs that I would give a first-round grade and 15 wide receivers. So the more picks that I could get in this class, I feel could severely boost your team, not just in depth, but in skill. Now, yes, it does suck giving up Saquon Barkley, because the one thing I'll agree with what Matt said is you're hoping that one of those players is going to bring back Saquon's value, and the chances are they're probably not, because Saquon is a transcendent talent. I know it feels like we say that every single year with the new running back coming out, but Saquon Barkley is it for me. And there's nobody in this class, in my opinion, that's going to be Saquon Barkley. So you are giving up some of that.
To be fair, the last time we said that was Todd Gurley, and that was true. I mean,
I said it for Zeke, and I don't know, maybe that was some of my Ohio State homerism in there, but I think Zeke's phenomenal. I think he gets underrated in the passing game. Me and Matt actually had a full discussion about that the other day with him and CMC. So, but yeah, I mean, regardless, yes, I get what you're saying. So you're looking at what was Gurley 5 years ago that he came out, 4 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago. So,
I'm not saying that Zeke is not a transcendent talent. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that Barkley had the same hype that Gurley had.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I got you. But that's where I would lean with it. Now, if you were sitting here saying that you were like a 3-2 team or a 2-3 team, I probably wouldn't do the deal, because you obviously have the pieces there. But if you're 0-5, and again, I don't know your full team, so I don't know if it's something where you're really contending. It's just because, I mean, I'll just use it this way. In my main dynasty league, I'm 1-4 right now, and I have Baker Mayfield, Odell, Hopkins, Adams, Saquon, Zeke, Chubb, Kittle. That's my starters right there, and I'm 1-4. Because those guys have just been disappointing so far this season. Now, I think they'll turn it around, so I'm not panicking. But right now, if you're looking at it and you're 0-5 and you don't have, like a core to build around, for me, I am someone who would take the picks. And in all honesty, that's part of the reason why I traded for Saquon in the trade we were just talking about, because I wanted someone I could build around. And with those other trades that I made, I kind of lost my depth, but I also gained back 3 second-round picks and 3 first. So now I have 6 picks going into next year's draft, just kind of putting, I guess, my money where my mouth is, and what I was just saying, that I want to get as many picks as I can in this draft, because I do feel the depth is going to be incredible with the talent that looks like it's going to be coming out in this 2020 class.
Excellent.
So yeah, I don't know if that helps you any. Like I said, it
does. I mean, but it doesn't. I don't think there's an answer.
There isn't. No, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I can say, I'm looking at this team that I've got here. Tyreek Hill's been sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyreek Hill comes back with Kerryon Johnson, Chris Carson, Saquon Barkley. All of a sudden, I win 4, 5, 6 games in a row.
Yeah.
See, I'd be more inclined to try and flip Tyreek Hill for picks.
Well, that was offered too, but it was cheap. That's the problem, is that the Tyreek Hill is significantly less.
But with those running backs, if you get a couple of, do you have your own 2020 picks?
And that's my other problem. I have only a second-round pick.
Second-round pick. Okay, so let me throw this out there to you. Maybe carry on after this week, because I think he has a big game against the Packers. Give him one more big game. That's 3 games in a row. Maybe you can sell a little bit high on him. You have the running back depth. I mean, I'd rather trade Carson than Kerryon, but I would think if Kerryon goes out there and has a really good game against the Packers on Monday Night Football, you might be able to sell him a little bit higher than your other guys. That way you get to keep Saquon, you keep Tyreek Hill, so you have that stud running back and wide receiver. Yeah, it sucks to give that kind of second guy in your running back core, but if you get a decent package back, then you can build around those two as being your main pieces.
I like that. And I'm going to move in that direction, actually. With Chris Carson and Kerryon Johnson available, I'll wait for one more Kerryon Johnson explosion. They'll both be packaged together to a win-now team. I've got TJ Hawkinson sitting there just waiting to develop, with Tyreek Hill as an anchor and Saquon Barkley taking the running back spot. So I'll move Carson, Kerryon Johnson, and I'll get all the picks in the world for him.
There you go. Sounds like a plan. I hope it works out for you. Hopefully that'll happen before next Thursday, so we can talk about the trade that you made. Tony's got to get out of here soon, so I want to jump in and do some of these most disappointing and surprising players. And we'll start with you, Tony. We're just going to give a quarterback, one at each position. So we'll start at quarterback. Tony, who is your most disappointing quarterback?
My most disappointing quarterback is Baker Mayfield, and by a mile, which I don't even want to, I feel like it's disrespectful at this point with all the hate that he's gotten. Mm-hmm. Probably a perfectly fine, suitable quarterback. I don't know enough about real life football to talk down about this man any more than anybody else ever has. But we were expecting a whole lot more, and I'll just leave it at that. It's been bad.
It has. It sucks. Matt, who do you got?
Mine's Cam Newton. Now, I had some concerns that maybe he wasn't totally healthy coming into the season, made me nervous. But obviously he rolled out there and put up really 2 subpar games. The second week in particular really hurt because there was a lot of buildup that he was at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that was going to be a good one for him. Just wasn't. And, now he's out. We don't know when he might be coming back. So he's my quarterback on the list.
And so for me, I put Kirk Cousins. I could have gone Baker, but Baker's my boy. It's my boy. I know he listens. We're practically best friends, so I can't besmirch his good name on this great podcast. Kirk, for me, I do think it's a lot though same with Baker's. We expected a lot more out of Kirk coming in. You could argue.
Yeah, we really did.
You could argue Stephon and Adam Thielen are right there with Odell and Jarvis. I would say Dalvin Cook is the better running back over Nick Chubb. He has a better defense around him. We really expected Kirk Cousins to kind of light it up, and he has done absolutely nothing, and this is coming from someone who has Kirk in a lot of leagues. So I would say he's right there with Baker. I can see the Cam Newton thing as well. I know, Matt, I was higher on Cam and the Panthers, as you know, coming into the season, and he has definitely kind of let people down. I think a lot of him, though, comes from that rushing that he is not giving people, which a lot of people expected him to give. What about your running back, Tony?
Latavius Murray's been a huge bummer.
Yeah.
I was full steam ahead on the. As a matter of fact, I'm new to the whole analyst gig. I'm new to Twitter. I'm new to podcasting. I'm new to all of it. And one of the first players that I latched on to was Latavius Murray. I still believe that he can become exactly what Mark Ingram was, but that's not what's happening. It's just not. And part of that, we talked about this on the last time I was on the podcast, that Fox brought up when Bridgewater came in. From that point in the game on, Murray only had two rushing attempts.
Yeah.
If he's not getting the ball, it doesn't matter. Like, my argument that he's a good running back doesn't exist because he's not even getting the chance for me to make the argument. So just total letdown there. I was off. I was wrong. That's my first whiff, and I'm happy to own it.
What about you, Matt?
Mine's Saquon Barkley, just because he was obviously the consensus number 1 overall pick, and I don't think any of the 5 weeks so far have you gotten what you had hoped or needed out of him.
Yeah. For me, I was torn between Damian Williams and Drake. I'm going to go Williams because he was drafted a lot higher. Now, I don't know where you were on him, Tony. I know me and Matt were not necessarily high on him coming into the season, but a lot of people were, and they were taking him in the 3rd and 4th round. Some of it obviously due to injury, but I think a lot of it's going to be down to the just how crowded that backfield is as well, with Darrell Williams and McCoy splitting time as well. So he has definitely been my most disappointing running back. What about wide receiver? Who is your most disappointing wide receiver, Tony?
Oh my gosh, I deleted it. Give me just a second. Dante Pettis is my most disappointing wide receiver. For some reason, I took it out of there. I thought I was going to have to be gone by now, so I wanted you guys to be able to move on without my notes. In a lot of redraft leagues, I went super running back heavy this year, and Dante Pettis was a wide receiver too for me. But I was banking on it, and foolishly, I mean, there's no way around it. That was another whiff, another miss. Did he get 2 targets last week?
Yeah, I mean, he should have had a touchdown. He did. He should have had a touchdown. He dropped it.
Yeah, I don't have Pettis' stats in front of me because it's just so burned into my head that he has let me down that I don't even need the stats anymore to justify it.
I don't even think he got a target the first week.
No. I mean, he wasn't targeted the first week, and they said it had nothing to do with injury or something like that. And then it was like a motivational thing for a while. And then now he's on the field and he's increasing his snap count, but he's still not being targeted, and he's not a blocker. So, would it be better for me to be out there?
Probably.
I'm 5'10", 155 pounds, just so you know.
What about you, Matt?
I'm going with DeAndre Hopkins. We've seen him in the past seem to be quarterback proof, offense proof, just putting up these monster numbers. And even though we've seen Houston put up some big games, including last week when they put up 53 points, we just have not seen the big performances from Hopkins. He's been fine, and if you had drafted him as a wide receiver too, you'd probably be all set. But I'm guessing based on where he was drafted, that was not where most people took him.
Yeah, for me, mine's Odell. Just right in with the Baker conversation we had earlier. When he came over to the Browns, everyone expected him to possibly fight for that number 1 wide receiver spot overall. He has only finished as a top 10 wide receiver once so far this season, and that was mostly, in my opinion, due to the in a way, lucky slant touchdown that he took to the house against the Jets. What about your tight end, Tony, before you get out of here? Who is your most disappointing tight end?
The Colts tight end group is somebody that I was turned off from the beginning. So to be fair, I'm going to say two tight ends. I'm going to say Jack Doyle and Eric Ebron, and that I'm personally not disappointed, but I know that a lot of people are. At one point last offseason, I traded Eric Ebron for Curtis Samuel in a 2nd-round pick because the owner believed that Eric Ebron would step right in and be the touchdown leader for the Colts or the end zone threat that they need. And I just knew, and deep in my gut, I knew that if both of these guys are on the field, they're going to just vulture each other. And then you add into that the unforeseen. Obviously, Andrew Luck retires, and all of a sudden, a quarterback who loved the tight end position is replaced by Brissett, who is just as soon to check down to anybody else who's available. So I'm sad for those guys. That's very disappointing to see that there's not one of those tight ends that has stepped up, because everybody who's caught up with Doyle or Ebron is just kind of caught at the back end of the tight end position there, and it's really hard to even stream that group.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know you got to get out of here real quick, Tony. So thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to talking to you next week. Let everybody know again where they can follow you and find you on Twitter. Yeah,
I'd love to have you follow me on Twitter at Commissioner Mister, and you can check my rankings at Dynasty Nerds. Other than that, that's all I got today.
All right, man. We look forward to talking to you on Thursday or next Thursday.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, with Tony gone there, we'll go ahead and finish up our last two real quick. Matt, who is your most disappointing tight end?
I'm going to go with O.J. Howard. Coming into the season, there was a big three at tight end, with Kelsey and Kittle and Ertz. And after that, there was a lot of jockeying about who should be 4, who should be 5, who's the next guy after that. And a lot of people were really high on O.J. Howard, the talent, thinking he had an opportunity to step up. I was a little leery of that going in, just because we have not seen a tight end explode in an Arian system, and it felt like the fact that they keep Cameron Brate and keep him in the mix, just adds competition at the position. And even I have been surprised at how little we've seen from O.J. Howard. It's, for all those people that grabbed him as tight end 4, reached a little bit to make sure they got him. There's a couple games where he hasn't been targeted.
Yeah.
He's not getting touchdowns. He's not really making big splashes with receptions or yardage. It's going to be, a big hole. And, especially people that have him in Dynasty, you don't want to cut bait because he's a young, talented player, but you also can't play him confidently any week. So it's kind of this no man's land for fantasy.
Yeah, I thought about putting him on there, but I was someone who was not high on him at all. As you were saying with the Arians offense, I did not think he was going to have a good year. But a guy that I did buy into because of the offensive scheme was Jared Cook. I thought him going over to New Orleans with Drew Brees and Sean Payton and everything he did in Oakland last year was just going to be phenomenal. Be a top 10 tight end again this year, possibly top 5, and he is obviously nowhere near that. We've seen one good game out of him, and that was last year where it seemed like they were trying to get him the ball just to prove that he still existed and could play on the football field. So definitely disappointed in him and in all these shares of him that I have. Let's knock out our most surprising players so far this season. Who is your most surprising quarterback?
I'm going with Gardner Minshew. A guy who not a lot was made of him during the draft. He went to Jacksonville, but all the talk was about Nick Foles, and after one quarter of the NFL season, he kind of got thrown out there. You don't know what to expect. And he's just been steady. He's been entertaining. He's made the Jags fun to watch. He's probably been the most pleasant surprise, I think, at a position that's just been really rough this year.
Yeah, it's been funny. I'm going to, dive off here a little bit on a tangent. It's really funny to me because you go back just a couple years ago when we had all the injuries. I remember the first one to go down was Rodgers, went down with the shoulder injury. You had a bunch of other quarterbacks go down that year, and everybody was talking about how the ratings were going down, and it was all because of the quarterbacks. And it's when they changed the rule that you can't put your body weight down on a quarterback when you're sacking them. Yet I feel like we've seen the same amount, if not more, quarterback injuries this year. I mean, you have a ton of big-name quarterbacks out, and I agree with you. Minshew Mania has been fantastic. We've talked about it many times. I think there's a realistic shot he might have gotten Wally pipped. You guys don't know what that is. Old school Yankee stuff. You get injured and lose your job to the player because they came in and played better. We didn't really get to see that much of Nick Foles, so I do think he probably has a chance to come back and be the starter. But Minshew has been phenomenal. I picked Kyler Murray just because I was high on him coming out. I had him right behind Dwayne Haskins as the number 2 quarterback for me in this draft class. I think he's looked phenomenal. Really, we kind of saw the full thing last week. I know it was against a bad Bengals team, but what he can do on the ground with his legs, and we already know that he can throw the ball. Obviously he's a little bit smaller than Cam Newton, but I compared him to being that dangerous, and the fact that he is more accurate than Cam, and then what he can do with his legs kind of adds that extra dynamic. And at the quarterback position, that's a big deal nowadays. You get those quarterbacks that can actually run the ball as well and get you those extra yards, possible rushing touchdowns. Why Kirk Cousins was the top 5 quarterback for multiple years in Washington, because he was getting you multiple rushing touchdowns every single year. I think that's a big game and part of the reason why those quarterbacks are so good. So it's Murray for me. Who'd you have at running back?
I went with Austin Eckler. We all thought he would have an opportunity. I know you and I both thought Justin Jackson might end up being the better value in that backfield. I don't think anyone thought that Austin Eckler would be at the top of the heap among running backs through 5 weeks. I think when I was looking at ESPN standard PPR scoring, he's running back 2 on the season right now. It just has been phenomenal, his production. Even last week with Melvin Gordon taking most of the rushing work, just what he's doing in the passing is keeping him steady and keeping him involved. And if you had him, especially for where you drafted him, that has just been a huge boon to your team.
Yeah, so I'm going to steal Tony's and go with Leonard Fournette. I obviously love the Eckler call as well. We've talked about him now multiple times. I think even after week 1, we were both like, can't he really keep finishing up in the top 5 every single week? And he has, outside of 1. And again, even last week, he finished as a top 5 running back, splitting time with Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon actually getting more carries, as we talked about. So I'm with you. Eckler has been awesome. And so is Leonard Fournette, a guy who has so far every game this season put up double-digit points. He's averaging 18.2 points a game right now. He's sitting at RB8. I didn't expect it out of him. I know the other co-host that I have on Fridays, Dennis, didn't. Dennis thought Fournette was going to have a really bad year. So I don't remember where you stood on Fournette, but the fact that he's been out there doing everything he's been doing, not just running the ball, but receiving as well, has really surprised me. And I'm happy for him, because I do think that he is a main part of what keeps that Jacksonville offense going. Let's see here. Who do you have as your most surprising wide receiver?
I went with Chris Godwin here. I thought he was going to have a good season. I thought he was poised to take a step up. Really excited about what he was going to do in Arians' offense. But even myself going into the season, I think we all thought Mike Evans was probably still the better pick out of there and the higher pick. And, Godwin was getting picked, when I was doing drafts, fourth, fifth, sixth round. Yeah. He has been incredible. He looks like he has potential to be a top 10 or maybe even a top 5 receiver. He's way more consistent and way more production than Evans. So far, he's everything we had hoped and more. And I just think the return on investment, again, in fantasy, when you have a first-round pick who's going off every week, that's not that surprising. That's what you're hoping is going to happen. That's kind of what you need is happening. But when you can find gold in those middle rounds that are carrying you week after week, that's where you can start to put up a big record and win some games.
Yeah, I love, obviously, the Chris Godwin call. It's funny. I know if you were to go back and listen to the preseason stuff for me, I was in a way almost talking out of both sides of my mouth, because I've never thought that I always say this and then it gets me in trouble because I say the same thing about Amari Cooper. Mike Evans is an elite NFL talent, but I've always kind of worried that he's not that good for fantasy or not as good as other people say he is. It's all because of volume, just like I say about Melvin Gordon. Like, he's not a horrible running back, but his volume is what brings him the fantasy points and makes him a fantasy star, a lot like Mike Evans. And that's what I was worried about coming in to this year, was like, I thought Mike Evans would dip, I thought O.J. Howard would dip with Godwin coming on, but I also did not think Godwin was going to be a wide receiver 1. I remember saying multiple times, like, I guarantee he finishes right around that top wide receiver 2, right around 13, 14, 15, and he is making me look extremely wrong right now. He's sitting as wide receiver 1, so mad props to him. I should have bought more into it. I know we've talked about many times that Bruce Arians has always made his slot wide receiver dominant in the NFL and in fantasy, so probably should have looked more into that, but I didn't necessarily believe that he'd do as good as he was. For me, I picked DJ Chark, as you were just saying, a guy that you can get phenomenal value for. I took Chark in a bunch of my leagues in the 16th round. Like, he was one of my last picks and yet he is right up there right now as a top 5 wide receiver. I don't think that continues. I do think that he kind of comes down a little bit, but his connection with Minshew has been phenomenal. And a lot of people want to talk about, well, it's just Minshew, but Nick Foles was actually throwing his way as well in that first game before Nick Foles got knocked out. If you guys remember, he got knocked out on the touchdown pass to DJ Chark. I think DJ Chark is a better receiver than D.D. Westbrook, and I do think he's becoming the one in Jacksonville. So DJ Chark, for me, most surprising. I think he's going to end up finishing right around 13 this year. I don't think he finishes as a wide receiver 1, but I would not be surprised if he finishes 13, 14, top of that wide receiver 2 tier. And then who'd you pick as your tight end?
I'm going to go back to my original choice, which is Austin Hooper. I am somebody who never reaches on tight end. I just don't see the point. I like to go for the other positions higher. Tight end always feels like a little bit of a gamble unless you're willing to pay up for one of those top guys. And, I think we've seen a lot of the guys we thought might be 4, 5, 6 have struggled. Austin Hooper is a guy that was really overlooked that you could get really late in drafts, and here we are 5 weeks into the season. He's tight end 1. It's been incredible. He has a real connection with Matt Ryan. That seems to be an offense that's going to have to throw a lot, and he's making the most of it. Even when he's not getting touchdowns, he's getting you a bunch of catches, a bunch of yardage, and it's just been a set it and forget it tight end. And when you can get that, 9, 10, 11, 12 round of a draft, that is a real benefit.
Yeah, I mean, he's becoming the new Tony Gonzalez of that offense, you could almost say. For me, I would say that the tight end that I picked is almost in the same category as Hooper, and that's Will Disley. I mean, last year he had 2 good games before he got injured. Everybody talked about him being a blocking tight end. I remember most people were higher on Nick Vannett coming into this year than Will Disley, and Nick Vannett got shipped out to Pittsburgh. Will Disley has a connection with Matt Ryan. He has looked fantastic, and as long as he stays healthy, I imagine he has a shot to finish right up there in the top 5 as well. He is just the same as you said about Austin Hooper. For me, a set it and forget it tight end, and a really good offense as well in Seattle. So that is my most surprising tight end so far. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you jumping on and sticking with me here. Obviously, Tony just left, and I can't wait to talk to both of you guys again on Thursday. Hope you have a good fantasy weekend. The gods grant you all the wins since they decided to let you beat me this past weekend. I guess that doesn't matter anymore in our FLA league. You can win now. I was hoping you would lose this past week. But I wish you all the best of luck this weekend, and I hope that your Broncos pull it out, and we will talk again on Monday.
Yeah, hopefully when we talk on Monday, both of us are coming off wins for our team. It'll make it a little cheerier.
I mean, I'm just going to be honest. If the Browns lose to Seattle, there won't be a podcast Monday because there will be many broken things in my house, and my wife will probably have kicked me out at that point. So, and I'm only semi-joking about that as well. I take that stuff way too seriously, but I do hope as well that we are both coming into Monday's podcast on wins.
Yeah, I think it's possible.
Yeah, I do too. I don't want to be all negative Nelly here. I actually do think the Browns have a good chance that Seattle Seahawks defense is beatable. I mean, we saw it against, my goodness, why did that, against the Ravens. They really, it wasn't a bad game against the Rams, but they really kind of came out after that loss to the Rams and put it together. I'm hoping they do the same thing here. I was just seeing stuff as we were recording Odell which worries me, him talking about being a little bit frustrated now and everything. That's exactly what we don't need is more drama. I hope they're able to put it all together because after this, they got a bye and then the Patriots. So they're not winning, I don't think, against the Patriots. So they need this one this week.
Yep. Well, best of luck.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to talking to you on Monday. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Of the field, intercepted by Eli Apple at the 25, and Apple will go to the ground at the 32, and that's it. Ohio State national champions for the 8th time as they defeat Oregon 42-20.
Here's Tua stepping back, loads up, looks long, throws, end zone,
touchdown!
Alabama! Devontae Smith, touchdown, Alabama! And the Crimson Tide has once again ascended to the top of the college football mountain. Their 5th national championship in 9 years, their 17th overall. And for
Watson takes a snap, rolls right, looks in the end zone. Hunter Renfrow caught it! Touchdown! 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 With a second left, Watson hits Renfrow, and Clemson grabs a 34-31 lead and is 1 second away from the 2nd national championship in school history.
Hill, just in front of his end zone, has a man out there. It is Rager, and he's off to the races. Nobody will catch him. 93 yards for the freshman.
Backed up out of your end zone.
Made the adjustments in the second quarter.
Dobbins again, more than 10 yards per carry. He'll add to that. Goodbye. Touchdown, Ohio State. From 52 yards.
Alright, but before I cut out of here, as Matt and Tony have left to go do other things, I'm going to talk about some of the college football games we have this weekend. We are going into week 7. I just want to touch on some big games really quick, as I did not get to do a podcast on Wednesday to focus on the college football stuff and the Thursday night game. So obviously you got Notre Dame USC. That should be a very good game. Notre Dame ranked number 9. You have Kevin Slovis coming back out of his concussion. He'll be playing for USC. I don't know if that really helps them that much. I still think Notre Dame and their defense are going to be able to win this one. They are being given the 84% chance to win it and are being given 10.5 points. I am taking Notre Dame to win that game, but should be a good one on late Saturday night. Iowa, Penn State, also late Saturday night, should be a good game. Iowa, big letdown game for me last week against Michigan. Nate Stanley, I've been one of the guys right on that hype train, kind of tooting the horn and getting all about Nate Stanley.
He sounded like a big choo-choo train.
And he let me down big time. I'm not off the hype train of him, but that was not a good game at all against Michigan. And I don't think he's going to get it done here against Penn State either. I think Penn State's going to keep on rolling to 6-0. Number 10, Penn State, 17, Iowa State. Outside of those, though, obviously you have the other big game on Saturday night, which is crazy that all these games are starting on Saturday night. A lot of good games. It's going to be hard to flip back and forth between these three. Just real quick, Notre Dame on NBC. You've got Penn State, Iowa on ABC, and then the big one on ESPN, LSU, Florida. That is going to be a huge game here. Big thing that's going to be is this Florida defense against this LSU offense. I mean, Joe Burrow and these wide receivers, Chase and Jefferson, have been just phenomenal so far this season. Joe Burrow has been in my opinion, the lead Heisman candidate. I know some people have got Tua up there. I would put Burrow number 1. They look like they're going to be serious championship contenders. They obviously have to play Alabama. Let's see here. When do they play Alabama? In 3 weeks, I think? 3 weeks. They've got Auburn as well. And they're likely going to have to play Georgia if Georgia goes undefeated in the SEC championship game. Again, assuming LSU beats everybody as well, they would have to beat Bama to get there. So it's hard for me to pick this game. I'm taking LSU to win it. I do think Joe Burrow and those wide receivers are going to be able to get it done, but they are playing a tough defense. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, kind of like that Auburn-Florida game was last week. And that's really it. The next big one, I mean, you do have Wisconsin, Michigan State, but I'm not sure that's going to be that tough. I mean, I saw what J.K. Dobbins did against Michigan State last week. Jonathan Taylor, I think, is a smidge better than Dobbins. I think he's going to be just fine and running all over them, so give me Wisconsin in that one. Then you've got Alabama, Texas A&M in that early afternoon game with the Wisconsin-Michigan State game. A lot of people talking about how this might be a game. I necessarily don't see it. I don't think Kellen Mond is that good for the Aggies. I mean, maybe the Aggies stay in it for a quarter, maybe up till halftime, but I think Alabama eventually just easily pulls away with this one. I think they easily win by a couple touchdowns. They struggled a little bit 2 weeks ago in week 5, I believe it was, when they played Arkansas. I'm sorry, that was Texas A&M. Who am I thinking of here? Ole Miss. They played Ole Miss. My bad, guys. They played Ole Miss, and they ended up winning that game 59-31. But it was a closer game throughout most of it. I mean, Alabama really kind of poured it on there in the second half, and then Ole Miss started coming back a little bit. They were up 38-10, and then Ole Miss kind of put 7-14 together. They started getting closer, but I feel like that defense probably got worked out a little bit more. I mean, obviously Nick Saban, phenomenal defensive coach. They had the bye week last week, did not play anybody. So I do think that they probably worked on their defense. I think they're going to come out a little bit stronger in this one. Texas A&M, I don't see Texas A&M being able to stick with them, although some do. Then, obviously, the big game, early afternoon, the one everybody's going to be tuning into, the Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma. Oklahoma coming in at number 6 with Jalen Hurts, a guy who is up there as well as a Heisman candidate, improving his draft stock with the way he's been playing. CeeDee Lamb on the outside with Rambo as well. These guys have looked phenomenal, but you cannot forget about what Texas has been doing. And I know a lot of UT fans and everything, and they're a little bit hyped for this game. I don't know if they think they can win it. Sam Ehlinger has been awesome. I think Avante Ingram has been decent, not as good as I had hoped. You have Duvernay, who has been really good at wide receiver, which I was not expecting. I was expecting Colin Johnson to be huge for this team. It's really been Duvernay who has stepped up here, the senior wide receiver for them. Oklahoma being given the 79% chance to win this game, and they are... Let's see here. Where are we at? They are 10.5 favorites in this one. I think it's going to be big. It's going to be a really good game, and I think it could come down a lot to last year. I think it was, last year for Texas and Oklahoma, where both defenses were kind of getting beat pretty much by the offenses the entire game, but Texas got that one stop, got the ball at the end of the game, drove down the field, kicked, I think it was like a 50-plus yard field goal, if I remember correctly, to win that game. Obviously, they lost in the Big 12 championship. I really think Texas is going to pull it off. I like their defense just a little bit more than Oklahoma's. I think they get that key stop. I trust Sam Ehlinger. I do think he's a little bit overrated and overshined being in the same conference as Jalen Hurts. I think they're going to be able to find a way to get that one big stop. That offense is going to keep on rolling. They're going to do just enough score at the end of the game and pull off the big upset here, moving to being tied with Oklahoma, giving both a loss in the Big 12 and putting you right back in the same kind of situation they were last year. Texas and Oklahoma both being 5-1, looking to probably try and play out the rest of the season undefeated and meet again in the Big 12 championship game. That's it, really. I mean, a game I'll be looking forward to watching late on FS1, Oregon, Colorado, just to see a little bit of Laviska Shenault and then my guy Justin Herbert with Oregon, but I don't think that'll be much of a game. Also would like to see a little bit more of Jacob Breeland, the tight end from Oregon. He's one of my top tight ends coming out in this class, but that'll do it right there for our college football preview. I'll make sure to be back next week on Wednesday, and we'll do one for Week 8. We've got a couple of interesting games on the docket for Week 8, but we're getting closer and closer to the end of the college football season, and we've got a ton of really good games coming up here in the next couple weeks. You got Ohio State, Wisconsin. I think Ohio State plays Penn State in a couple weeks as well. You're going to obviously have Alabama, Georgia, Alabama, Auburn in the Iron Bowl. I mean, Ohio State, Michigan. I mean, it's just ridiculous how many good games we have coming down the pipe here. Iowa, Wisconsin. it's going to be ridiculous, guys. So I'm telling you right now. So I'm looking forward to breaking some of those down. And as we get closer and closer as well, I'll continue to talk about my top draft prospects for this upcoming class. But before we obviously get to the offseason, where we'll do a whole lot of talk and breakdown on each of them, just to give you guys an idea of who to continue to watch on Saturdays if you guys are watching college football. So thank you guys so much for sticking with me through the whole podcast. I appreciate it. If you guys left, well, obviously if you left earlier, you're not hearing this, so I guess it doesn't matter. But if you are still here, thank you so much. Please, if you guys get a minute, rate and review the podcast. It really helps me out. It really means a lot to me if you guys do that. It means a lot. And then shoot me a DM of your rate or review, and I'll get you entered in a jersey contest. Hoping to do one here in the next couple weeks. I had a lot of stuff going on, so I haven't had a chance to get one. I already have the jersey. Just haven't had time to put it up on Twitter and get some more entries and all that stuff situated. I want to make sure that everybody that has been in before stays in there, because we obviously had the one winner already, so she has been removed from the pool, but just want to make sure all that stuff is good to go. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. Rate and review when you guys have time, and have yourselves a great football weekend. I look forward to watching the games, and I hope you guys do. I hope the fantasy gods bless you with many wins this weekend.
Prepare for glory!
I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. If you got your popcorn ready. I came out the womb, I was ready. And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly.
Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Let's talk credit card debt for a minute. If you feel you're carrying too much of it, you're not alone. The average household in the U.S. carries over $8,000 in credit card debt. Ready for some good news? With a cash-out refinance from Quicken Loans, you can quickly and easily put some of the equity in your home to good use by paying off a lot of that high-interest credit card debt. A great way to take cash out is with our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 3.99%, APR 4.08%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN to learn how taking cash out with a 30-year fixed mortgage might be the right solution for you. And for a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rates subject to change. Pay 1.25% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
And now, a thought from Geico Motorcycle.
It took 15 minutes to take a spirit animal quiz online.
Please be the cheetah. Please be the cheetah.
And learn your animal isn't the cheetah, but the far less appealing blobfish.
Oh, come on.
To add insult to injury, you could have used those 15 blobfish minutes to switch your motorcycle insurance to Geico.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on motorcycle insurance.